again, if I can go back to the experts, Taoiseach, page 38, Ireland's mounting financial vulnerabilities meant that strong action was called for to override the prevalent light touch and market-driven fashions of supervision. They say to call a spade in terms of mounting systemic risk and to head off the risks of a crisis. Let's call a spade here, Taoiseach. Charlie McCreevy loved the light touch. You followed his example.
Well, what we had in building up an international financial services centre in Ireland and an industry in Ireland was we needed to compete with what was happening in other countries. That was what was happening in other countries, with the exception. The only place that hasn't had to recapitalise the banks in the Western world that I'm aware of is Canada. Everywhere else has had to put in billions and trillions of dollars, unfortunately, because of the impact of this problem. So let's be clear. It's not in any way to take away the responsibility that I have as Taoiseach or that I had as Minister of Finance. I am prepared to explain the whole context in which those decisions were made and the fact that there was a rationale for the decisions. For example, if you may, because you made the point in an earlier discussion about the pro-cyclical nature of the budgetary strategy. There's 2 points. When people don't know what, let's be clear what that means. What that means is when we had plenty of resources, the idea that we put all that to spending, regardless of the future, is not correct. We reduced our debt down to 12% net. In other words, the room for manoeuvre we have now is because we reduced debt and also, of course, in good times, if I may, in good times, made sure that we made some infrastructural investments, deficits like the motorway system and everything else that we have now, that are providing for a more competitive economy in the future.
I hear that point. To go to key decisions, again, it looks like you poured fuel on the fire, according to these reports. To quote, policy instruments such as fiscal policy, bank regulation, income policy, they weren't used, they even fueled the fire, in particular tax policy. The conclusion, according to Riegling and Watson, page 5, that is overall fiscal policies were pro-cyclical during most years up to and including particularly 2007, and this added markedly to the overheating of the economy. This was your patch, this was your bailiwick. You were the Minister of Finance, Taoiseach. You presided over fiscal policies that basically led to us crashing as an economy.
If you go to the next paragraph or the paragraph after that, which you don't quote, it goes on to say that in most developed countries there was a pro-cyclical policy in place all around. Now, what were we doing? What does this mean? Let's talk to brass tacks to people. When you're in the position where there are more resources available to the country, what other time are you going to decide to build some hospitals or build some schools or build a motorway or improve your health services or provide more nurses or put more special needs assistants in our schools?
The OECD, quoted in the report, said that Ireland was the most overheated of all advanced economies.
And I've explained to you that the 4 decisions that we had been taking to take the heat out of the economy when I became Minister of Finance in 2004 was to bring forward a uniform abolition of all of these tax incentives that you were going to come to, the property tax incentives, which had outlived their usefulness. In retrospect, it wasn't sufficient because we needed probably to do that sooner, and I acknowledge that. But please, if I may, one point. There was also the fact that we took 1% of GNP into the National Pension Reserve Fund. If that wasn't done, that would have went towards increased expenditure or reduced taxation. And the only other point I'd like to make, and it's been sort of stated by Richard Bruton here to the contrary, if you look at the record of what was being said to me. It was described as being measly. I was described by the Labour Party as providing totally inadequate provision in money terms for the services that we had. So let's everyone just revert back to this country. If I may, if I may, for 4 or 5 years ago.
I just want to bring you tax incentives. Sorry for cutting across you, but you yourself are interested in talking about tax because you brought it up earlier. But let me quote again. The OECD found that by 2005, the cost of tax allowances in this country, reliefs and exceptions, had become larger than the remaining income tax receipts. I mean, wasn't that lunacy?
The first thing I did when I became Minister of Finance in my first budget, I stopped the practice where high-earning individuals could reduce their taxes right down to very low levels, where they have to be paying a minimum rate of tax. And the following year, I abolished all those tax incentives. So if you want to ask me, during my period of office, what was I doing? I was seeking to take the heat out of the economy in respect of the role that property tax incentives were playing, because they were overvaluing property. I'm sorry?
The system remained distorted.
What we have in this country, even in the aftermath of this very difficult period over the last 2 years, we still have 400,000 more people working. We have 12.5% unemployment. What people want to know with respect is not the history lesson. Where are we going to go from here? I accept and have argued as part of this interview the rationale for the decisions I took, and I can come and do so again in more detail if you wish. But in relation to the decisions that this government has taken, we have a confidence motion next week. We have shown the capacity to take the difficult and necessary decisions. Okay. The others have advocated default, which would destroy our credibility in terms of funding the deficits that we have, and the Labour Party have decided we shouldn't have had a guarantee at all, which was to know that that was the guarantee at all, which was to know that that was the choice.
A poll came out tonight, as you know, Taoiseach, and that was done before these reports came out, and I think we have a graphic just giving us some of the details, which is the state of the parties. Fianna Fáil 17 down 5, Fine Gael 28 down 4, Labour 32 up 8, and Greens 3 unchanged. In relation to the party leaders, Brian Cowan is at 18 down 8, Enda Kenny 24 down 7, Eamon Gilmore remains unchanged at 46, and John Gorman is 21 down 3. And again, let's just go to the final one, satisfaction with government, and that's at 12 down 7. Look, however you look at that, Taoiseach, that is, with respect, disastrous for yourself and the government.
This government has its term to run. What decides my position as Taoiseach is majority support in Dáil Éireann. I'm not going to walk away from my post. I'm going to make sure that I see us through this period, that we take the decisions that we have to take, that we face up to the problems, and to acknowledge, as I do, responsibility in respect of the decisions I took, the context in which that was taken, and the rationale for it, and the justification there was at the time. Nobody, and I say this very clearly, in the idea that we could have factored in an economic and financial crisis of this magnitude was not on. But what we did do, and what I'm trying to make the point is, that we did reduce our debt even though we had much increased spending on issues that were important for our people. When else were we going to do them?
The governor has been changed. Yeah. We now have a Matthew Elderfield in there as well. A lot of the very top people of the banks are gone. What this poll is genuinely saying, Taoiseach, is that the Irish people don't want Brian Cowan and your government running this country. Shouldn't you give them a chance now to change the government if they want?
This government has been elected for its term. The people have their opportunity in a democratic election when we complete the term, when we have the opportunity to build on the growth which is now coming back into the economy because of the tough decisions we are taking, and the fact that if we didn't take these decisions, we would have seen a huge catastrophic effect of the impact of the crisis on this country. And we have to be prepared, and we are. I won't walk away from my responsibility, but I am accountable for what I do, and I face that accountability at the end of that term.
Thank you, and I appreciate you coming in to the studio tonight. Thank you. And now over to Richard in Gaza.